Hi, and welcome to day 5. You're crushing it. Good job. Keep going. Today, our talk is about posture and how your posture, how you stand, how you sit, how you carry yourself can be contributing to your symptoms of ilio-tibial band pain, and how you want to just bring yourself back to center so that you're not doing these habitual patterns of standing and sitting and carrying yourself that lead to and contribute to your pain. So one of the biggest problems that I see in folks who come in with ITB issues is that they tend to be stand on one leggers. They tend to stand with their weight on one side or the other almost constantly. When you shift your weight to one side, it's often indicative that something else is going on. Like it's maybe you have a hip height inequality, leg length inequality, maybe there's a little scoliosis, maybe it's just old habit. Fine, all of those things might be contributing to why, but then it becomes so deeply embedded that you get stuck there. And without thinking time and time again, bring yourself into this pattern. Now, the problem with that relative to iliotibial band pain is multifold. There are two really big issues that come up when you bring your weight over onto one side. One problem is that as your pelvis shifts over like that, one side of the inner thighs gets really tight and short and full of tension. The other side gets really long. So that can even lead to some pelvic pain or some groin pain, things like that. But as far as the outer hip is concerned, now over here, the gluteus minimus and gluteus medius are pulled really long, and that femur is being pushed out of the socket. And when the femur gets pushed out of the socket, that gluteus minimus, gluteus medius, acting as rotator cuff of the hip, really want to push the top of the femur back in the socket, which essentially would bring you back to center. Except that those little muscles don't have the power to bring your entire body over and back to center. So they get stuck working really, really, really hard against the pull of your body weight and the strength of these inner thighs, which want to keep maybe pulling you back out of center. So gluteus minimus gets pulled really long, really hanging on for dear life, and gets really activated with a lot of tension and a lot of trigger points, which then can create that radiating pain down the outer thigh. Now, the second thing that can happen is that if you're putting your weight all on that side, then it can pull the iliotibial band flush with the quad underneath. Like there's no space in between them. It crushes all the fluid right out of that area. And that dryness of that tissue can create adhering of the iliotibial band to the vastus lateralis quad muscle deep to it. So I'm going to say that again. All the fluid gets pushed out. The muscle then, the iliotibial band and the muscle, the quad below it, begin to get stuck together. Then you lose mobility in the quads, and that quad gets so stuck and it doesn't like to be stuck like that, doesn't move as well, and that can create radiating pain down the iliotibial band. So the side-to-side posture, no good. It's not helping you. Often you'll find that the side that you're standing on is creating that pain. So try to keep reminding yourself to come back to center. Now, another posture that I see, a standing posture, could be that you're tucking the pelvis under and kind of thrusting it forward. And you might be like kind of get used to standing like this a little bit. And that thrusting of the pelvis forward and leaning back, besides everything it's doing to your neck, shoulders, back, everything else, tucking that pelvis under, shortening the hamstrings, creating those problems that we talked about with the hamstrings and the quads. So when you're sitting, anything that's bringing the knees closer together, crossing the legs, going to shorten those inner thighs, create the same conditions on those outer hips where the gluteus minimus is just being pulled too long. So boiling all that down means to stand in the center. Try to stand with your weight on both feet. So just get up with me right now. Stand, separate your feet about hip distance apart, And does it feel natural for you to stand with your weight on 2 feet, or do you find yourself kind of migrating more easily over to one side or the other? Just notice and check that out in your own body. So, and then being more and more mindful to stand in the center, to sit in the center, to uncross your legs, and to sit up nice and tall. So I have a really quick video that I'm going to attach here on active posture, which also decompresses your spine. That's going to help you get centered and sit and stand with greater awareness and in a position that actually fosters good health instead of causing problems in the muscle tensional systems. This movement break, we're getting down on the floor and we're going to do windshield wipers. Now, one thing about this version of windshield wipers, I like your feet pretty wide, so wider than hip distance apart, so that you get a bigger stretch. And it's really great for quads, really great for inner thighs, outer hips, and just keeping things hydrated. So I'm going to get down on my back, arms out to the side comfortably, feet a little wider than hip distance apart. And then drop the knees side to side. We're gonna do this for a minute. And there's no pushing involved. You could go a little slower if a slower pace is better for you. You could go a little faster if a faster pace is good for you. Just notice that your feet are comfortably wide, a little wider than hip distance apart. And that allows a little more stretch through the quads and the hip flexors as you go down. Really getting nice opening through glutes. It's a great time to check into your breathing. Are you breathing deeply in your belly? Can you return your breath nice and big to your belly? And we're just gonna do one more to the first side. Take an extra breath there. And then one more to the other side. Come back to center. And then you're ready to get on with your day. So to release your adductor magnus on the floor, you're going to want the small ball, and you can always try a different ball. You can always use the bigger ball, just do whatever, however it works for you, right? You're going to want, for sure, a yoga block or your box that your tools came in to elevate the ball up to your body, okay? I like to have a chair nearby. The chair is a great way to support your upper body as you're working into the adductor magnus. So let's get started. You're gonna sit down on the floor, and for this one, the right leg is the leg I'm gonna work on. So I have the chair off to the left, chair off to the other side. Left leg is just kind of folded out of the way, and the block comes underneath the upper right thigh, and the right leg lays over top of it. So now I'm using the small myofoam ball. I'm going to find that gracilis tendon, that thickness of gracilis right here up at the groin. And I'm going to slide the ball right behind it. So there's the ball right there, right behind that tendon. And then if I want to put a little more pressure, I can twist toward the chair and support myself, or I can use the chair to help me to sit up and get way down on that ball. Now, if that's still not enough pressure, you can flip this block up one layer. And then it takes a little bit of finesse to get the ball back there, drop it down. Now you're really gonna need that chair to hold yourself up, right? But here's that ball right behind. Oh, and it's so good. And I'm trying to get it just right next to the sitting bone, actually, toward the inside of the sitting bone. So we're just going to sink down there, take a couple breaths. All right. And then once you get that first point or check those couple points right next to the sitting bone, then you can usually drop that block down a little bit because then the tissue is more accessible. So now that block is down, I take the ball, I move it down an inch or two, and then just drop that thigh right on top of it. It's exciting. You can lean on the chair. You can use an ottoman, whatever, you know. You don't even have to use it. You can just have your hand on the floor. But it does make it a bit more comfortable for this part of the practice. This leg, you can play with. It doesn't have to bend back all the way, but you do need the toes pointing forward or just slightly rotated. And you can play with that rotation. Where do you find that really special spot? But here's the gracilis running along the inner thigh, we're right behind it. And you can move down even further, about halfway down. And we're making sure that we're not pointing the toes up. Right now I'm in the hamstrings. And if I point the toes totally to this knee, to this, and the toes and the knee to the front, I drop that ball and now I'm in gracilis. So I need to be behind the gracilis tendon, right in there, and there's our adductor magnus. So we're just going to be here, another breath. Okay, and that's it for adductor magnus on this side. We're going to switch right to the other side. So we're going to move the chair over to the other side, and then set yourself up. Now we're going to work on the left side. The right knee is bent and just kind of move out of the way. Take your block or your box and slide it underneath the inner thigh. We're going to find, I'm just going to move that leg out of the way. We're going to find that gracilis tendon, that thick tendon right up at the groin, and we're going to get the ball right behind it. And then if you start singing opera in your head, that's probably a good indication that you have found a really good point. So you can sink down in there. And then you can always turn your body. See that turning, that twisting kind of drops that tissue down a little bit more onto the ball. And play with maybe, can you get back closer to that upper hamstring attachment, but still to the inside a little bit. Maybe move the ball down now a little bit, getting up on top of it. Ooh, that's a big spot for me. I always have a real tender spot right there. So right along the inner thigh, I have the gracilis tendon. It's very thick. It's a thick tendon, and I want to stay behind it. I'm just going to keep saying that because you want to keep checking to see that you're right behind it. And move down a little bit more. Oh, it's so good. So I'm just kind of moving on it a little bit. Take a couple breaths here. All right, and now we're going to release that ball. And we're going to do a little adductor stretch so the legs nice and wide. Lift your toes up. Move your butt flesh up away from the floor. And just like a nice seated wide angle forward fold. We'll take 2 breaths here. And that's releasing adductor magnus. Next up, we're going to release gluteus medius at the wall. And if you've never done this work before, I do recommend that you start with that soft logo ball. Just Start with the softball, especially as you are exploring, and then you can use the larger myofoam ball as the second step, and then sort of graduate level rolling would be using that small myofoam ball. It's going to be so specific, and it might be a little rough on your tissue to begin with this until your body is more used to the very specific self-trigger point release. So we're going to start with the softball, and then we can switch to the bigger ball. I'm going to do the whole first side with the softer ball and the second side with the larger ball. So let's go. We're going to start on the left side. And so the gluteus medius holds its points up at that top rim of the pelvis. So you just find your sacrum in the middle. It's that flat bone in the middle of your pelvis that ends right at the top of where the buttock separation begins. And you're going to place the ball just off to the side. Now that pelvis curves around toward the front, so you will have to turn your body a little bit. And then if you step your feet about wider than hip distance apart, just step your feet a little bit separate, and then shift your weight from side to side. And that's going to bring that ball across the top rim of the pelvis. So see how high I am up here. This gluteus medius, right? This is how high I am. I'm not down here in the butt. I'm not in the low back. I'm right at that top rim of the pelvis. So you can sink in, get right next to the sacrum and the top of the pelvis, and then sink your body down in. And after you've done that little bit of back and forth, side to side, that sinking the body in, ooh, just really allows the ball to get into the tissue. And take a couple of deep breaths right down here in the belly. And then after that first spot, you just step your way to the back foot a little bit so the ball slides a little forward, bend the knees a little bit more, top rim of the pelvis, second point, gluteus medius, second point. That's tender in there. And then for the third point, we move the ball down just slightly and then get toward the out. Now I'm not perpendicular to the wall. I'm turned just slightly behind perpendicular to the wall. And I might, you can explore up and down, circling a little bit right there, gluteus medius with the logo ball, the soft ball. So good. And then with gluteus medius, we're going to do a little stretch where you just step that back leg behind so the leg we just rolled is the left hip. We're going to step that leg behind the right leg, do a little side bend. It's more about bending that front knee so that we stretch this outer hip. That's one way to do it. Now we're going to do the second side, and for this one we're going to use that larger myofoam ball. So again, how do we begin? Here's the sacrum, top rim of the pelvis. We're going to be riding up high. Here's the gluteus medius. We're not down here in the buttocks. Once again, we're right up here at the SI joint. So if I were straight against the wall, I wouldn't be on it. I have to turn my body about 45 degrees, step the feet a little apart so that we can cruise forward and back along that top rim of the pelvis. Checking by the sacrum. You can kind of circle around, move a little slowly, sink into the tissue, isolate a real tender spot right next to the sacrum, and take a couple of deep breaths in the belly. Great. And then we come around toward the front a little bit. You can go slightly up and down by bending and straightening the knees, just kind of checking it out, sinking in. If you're having trouble finding a tender spot, remember to stop moving and just allow your body to sink in a little bit. Great. And then the last point, just 3 points. It's right near that last one. Just come a little bit more toward the outer hip. Scoot the ball down a little. You could, again, do the up and down by bending the knees and straightening the legs and just kind of going up and down there. And then finding that last tender spot just before perpendicular to the wall, just in front of that tender, riding way up high. You got to be up high on the rim of the pelvis. Couple of breaths. Relax your jaw, soften your eyes. You want to just keep softening your nervous system. Relax as many parts of your body as you can, especially the jaw and the eyes. Because if you tense the jaw and open your eyes wide, tense the eyes, that sends a signal to your nervous system that there's stress and that it's going to recontract those muscles. So everything kind of gets hanging and loose. And then we go back through, check in that gluteus medius. Last couple of moments here. Great, and then we're going to do our gluteus medius stretch, where we take that right leg now, step it behind the left, step the left foot across, bend the left knee. You can add a little side bend too, but really we're just trying to open that spot. Left knee bends forward, right leg is straight, stretching that space on the side of the hip and the back of the glutes. Great. So that's releasing gluteus medius at the wall.